American Indians and Alaskan Natives, or as we call it, Operation Lady Justice. The purpose or the goal of this task force is to make the criminal justice system work better so that we more effectively and appropriately respond to the concerns of American Indian and Alaskan Native communities regarding missing and murdered people. And I want to just tell the, Tara, if you can pick up the PowerPoint just dropped off my screen.
I believe it's dropped off of everyone's screen.
Okay, let me just pop into my email and keep this moving.
Katie, I'm happy to, while they're doing the, taking a look at the task force members. I'm Tara Sweeney, Assistant Secretary for Indian Affairs. I am from Barrow, Alaska, also known as Ukkarvik. We have our task force members here represented today. We can start with a brief introduction by Terry Wade.
And I believe we have someone coming in, stepping in for Mr. Wade from the FBI today.
Is it Timothy?
Right.
Timothy,
I'm here.
yeah. Thank you. If you'd like to do a brief introduction, that would be great. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. Well, good afternoon, everybody. On behalf of Executive Assistant Director Terry Wade, my name is Tim Dunham. I'm a Deputy Assistant Director in the FBI's Criminal Investigative Division, and my branch of CID houses our National Indian Country Crimes Investigation Program. So I'm very pleased to be here today and look forward to the dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you. And Laura Rogers, Acting Director on the Office on Violence Against Women with the Department of Justice.
Good afternoon. This is Laura Rogers. At the Office on Violence Against Women, we of course focus on domestic violence, sexual assault, stalking, and we are very excited to be part of this task force as our focus is on women, children, and men, and we are very excited to focus on missing and murdered of Indigenous women and children. And thank you for taking your time to be part of this listening session today.
Thank you. And Charles Addington, Deputy Bureau Director, Bureau of Indian Affairs, Office of Justice Services from the Department of Interior. Mr. Addington?
Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you all for joining us today and to be able to speak about this very important topic. My name is Charles Addington. I am the Director for the Bureau of Indian Affairs, Office of Justice Services, which provides law enforcement and public safety services to tribes throughout the nation, and we're so excited to be a part of this task force and look forward to the dialogue with everyone today and how we will move forward with addressing this issue of missing and murdered individuals in our Indian country communities. So thank you.
Great. And U.S. Attorney Trent Shores, who did a lot of outreach for this listening session. We appreciate that, Mr. Shores.
Well, Halito, this is Trent Shores. It is my honor to be here. I'm the United States Attorney for the Northern District of Oklahoma. I'm also a proud citizen of the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma. I know that we have a lot of citizens from Oklahoma tribes, so hello to my fellow citizens out there. We have an opportunity today to hear from you about your concerns, your ideas for how we can move forward to better and more comprehensively address the issue of missing and murdered Indigenous peoples in the United States. And in my role as the chair of Attorney General Barr's Native American Issues Subcommittee, I am committed and dedicated to this issue and will not only work for these issues on this task force, but bring them back to the Department of Justice as well. I look forward to hearing your comments today. Yakoke.
And we have Jeannie Hovland, Deputy Assistant Secretary for Native American Affairs and Commissioner of the Administration for Native Americans, Department of Health and Human Services. Jeannie?
Thank you. And Petuashte Madakiapi Chante Washte Nape Chuzapi Isanteoyate Matahansto. Good afternoon, my relatives. I greet you with a good heart. I'm Jeannie Hovland. I'm a proud member of the Flanders Santee Sioux Tribe, Commissioner of the Administration for Native Americans. I'm so honored to be here this afternoon with folks from the White House and Operation Lady Justice Task Force members from the Department of Interior and Department of Justice. I so appreciate the President's support on this important issue and making this a priority of his administration. To the tribal leaders and members on the phone, I want to say thank you from my heart for your years of advocacy to remember and bring justice and healing to our families and communities who have experienced the tragedy of a missing or murdered relative. Please know your voices have been heard, and we are here to work in partnership with you to bring our relatives home and keep our communities safe. I'm grateful that the task force has broadened this issue to include the Department of Health and Human Services so we can have a holistic approach which is required to really make a positive impact. I look forward to hearing from you today on how we at HHS can support community-based prevention, intervention, and healing services. Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. And then again, I'm Katy Sullivan. I'm Attorney General Barr's representative as a co-chair with Assistant Secretary Sweeney on this task force. It's such an incredible honor, and I also cannot wait to hear what all of you have to say and the feedback that you want to give us today. Thank you. Our task force work projects and accomplishments. Our first most important job of the task force is to listen to impacted Native communities. The task force has conducted listening sessions with NCAI's Executive Council, DOI's Tribal Interior Budget Committee, HHS ACF Tribal Advisory Committee, HHS ANA Grantees Meeting, and DOJ's Tribal Nations Leadership Council. We have launched the task force website.
Your conference is being recorded.
OperationLadyJustice.usdoj.gov, which includes a schedule of tribal outreach events, readouts from prior sessions, links to resources, facts and fact sheets, tribal and state efforts, as well as working group progress. So please utilize the website. Our formed working groups are developing multidisciplinary cold case teams to review cold cases of both missing persons and murdered cases, education and outreach campaign for affected AIAN communities, training for law enforcement, victim services, communities and families, comprehensive guides to available resources, relationships with existing tribal and state task forces, best practice guides for missing persons and murder cases, including family communication and victim services. Our ongoing specific projects include restarting the Volunteers in Police Service program to help utilize community volunteers in missing persons cases, establishing a Justice Connect section within the Law Enforcement Enterprise Portal, or LEAP, in the FBI CJS database, compiling ideas for legislation to solve some of the identified gaps or legal issues, and meeting with law enforcement, victim service programs, domestic violence coalitions, and others to hear about field experience in American Indian and Alaskan Native communities. We are coordinating efforts with other federal commissions and task forces, including the President's Commission on Law Enforcement and the Administration of Justice, the Elise Spotted Bear and Walter Soboleff Commission on Native Children, the Federal Enforcement Working Group on Combating Human Trafficking and Online Child Exploitation in the United States, the Attorney General's Initiative on Missing and Murdered Indigenous People, and the White House Council on Native American Affairs. By November 26 of 2020, the task force is charged with developing and submitting a written report to the President regarding the activities and accomplishments of the task force, the status of projects the task force has not yet completed, and specific recommendations for future actions of this task force. By November 26th of 2021, the task force is charged with developing and submitting a final report to the President regarding the activities and accomplishments of the task force. So I'm sure you're all aware of how crucial these listening sessions are. Up on your screen right now are listening session questions broadly. What does the problem of missing persons or murdered cases look like among the people in your community? What are some of the major problems or challenges that your community face? What are the major strengths and assets of your community in handling missing persons or murder cases? And what are your visions for how to make your communities and people safer in the area of missing persons or murdered cases? At this juncture, I'm going to turn it over to the listening so we can listen to you. Again, if you would like to speak, please just use the hand raise button at the top of your screen, and Erica will be calling upon you. Tribal leaders, please, in the first 30 minutes. Thank you so much.
Okay, first we have Renee. Renee, you're, actually we don't have a microphone from Renee. Tamara, your microphone is unmuted.
Can you hear me?
You can begin speaking. Oh, yes,
can you hear me?
Can. Yes, Renee, we can.
Hello. Hello, loves. Sorry about that. May I go ahead now and go ahead and speak?
Yes, please do.
Thank you. Buenos dias and good morning. My name is Renea Ashika. I am not a tribal leader, so I don't know if you want me to go first or would you like me to wait? I am a Renea Ashika, an Indigenous educator and activist in the area in Denver. May I speak on that or should I wait? Hello?
Yeah, you can go ahead and speak. You have 3
Okay.
minutes.
Thank you, ma'am. I am Renea Ashika. I am the Nemashika woman with ancestors from southern Colorado and New Mexico. I'm an Indigenous Chicana activist and educator, teacher at Spirit of the Sun in Denver. Most importantly, I'm the mother of 2 sons. I'm determined to fight for social justice and climate justice for our future generations. I live in the land of the Cheyenne, Ute, and Arapaho people, now called Denver, Colorado. And after 8 years in the U.S. Navy with my husband, we now reside in Commerce City, Colorado, that has been known for the insidious pollution of Suncor and other extractive industries choking POC with proven deadly environmental racism that has also contributed to sex trafficking in the Colorado area from truck stops for decades. The dynamic issues in addressing MMIW, missing and murdered Indigenous women, because of all these factors, rural and urban, will be challenging but long overdue. As an Indigenous woman, and learned from the women before me, we have the resilient perspective of survivorship from fully realizing predatory targeting by industries to exploit resources and people. Issues of environmental racism and exploitation of resources and land. The first example of the first human victims to the exploited effects of overconsumption and environmental resources spilling over to social injustice of marginalized and impoverished communities. We've survived this for centuries. We know what predators look like. Our First Nation sisters started leading this movement decades ago. The term MMIW and girls started in Canada. From the Highway of Tears, the Department of Justice surveyed 2,000 American Indian women on reservations and off, and 84% of those women have experienced violence in their lives. 56% of those Native women experience sexual violence, and 90% of those women have experienced sexual violence as victims of non-Native perpetrators. 60% of the Native women have experienced psychological violence in their lifetime. These numbers are seriously underestimated. The actual psychological and statistics of psychological effects for Native women has no infrastructure in place to handle the amounts of these complaints or victim advocacy, which I am advocating for in the Denver area. At the root of this is also predatory capitalism, where people deeply impoverished will be the first to be hit with toxicity, both material and socioeconomic resources and social, in exploitation and trafficking in urban areas. This is modern colonialism in Indigenous communities. It preys on those easiest to harm without any protections or real victim advocacy. In rural and sovereign communities to provide for themselves, it puts them in a position to not have protection or awareness, and without those resources to not hold predators legally accountable, it leaves people going invisible. At the root of this is poverty and lack of representation and lack of access to basic human rights. We demand political officials and departments at the FBI and criminal justice institutions gather and report accurate data about missing and murdered Indigenous women. We demand information be easily available for public record for families and investigators across state and federal jurisdictions. And we support the Green New Deal for a transformation to change to 100% renewable energy because this is linked to climate justice. The long legacy of this suffering has led to a dramatic inequity, inequality, and no enforcement or accountability to protect women, children, men, and the earth being destroyed to outdated industrial industries. It should never be okay to hurt local poor or rural communities like mine. And to protect them, we need to be the heroes. The U.S. government has a chance to correct this corruption at the expense of our suffering by strengthening information, protection, and enforcement. Stop protecting predatory polluters contributing to human rights abuses, and please start responding to America's environmental human needs during this pandemic, because our chance to be good ancestors is now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Erica, the next speaker, please.
Okay, the next speaker is Tamara. Tamara, you're on. Please go ahead.
Hello. And hi, and just a reminder, we are keeping the comments to 3 minutes per presenter. So go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Tamara Borchardt Clayton. I'm the chairwoman for the Paiute Indian Tribe of Utah. There are 8 federally recognized tribal nations in Utah. Tribes in Utah account for just over 1% of the state's population, but the homicide rate for Native Americans is 4 times that of white people. Recently, the Utah legislature passed the Murdered and Missing Indigenous Women and Girls Task Force legislation to understand the scope of the crisis in Utah. This is an incredible first step to ending this crisis. For more than a century, Indigenous people of this land have questioned the federal and state response to violence in Indian country. Indigenous people have raised concerns about how Supreme Court cases have effectively constrained the authority of tribal nations to prosecute non-Indian perpetrators who commit crimes in tribal nations. Additionally, Indigenous nations have reported that homicide and missing of their own tribal members to federal and state authorities. These pleas have not been elicited a reasonable response from federal, state, county authorities on homicide rates in cases of missing Indigenous persons. Hundreds, even thousands of Indigenous families all over the country mourn and grieve over the loss of loved ones. Justice failed these families for over a century. Presently, we've had to challenge the accuracy of data collected by law enforcement. This data did not reflect the reality experienced by thousands of Indigenous families in Utah. We've had to accept in many instances public safety policies formulated for and implemented in Indigenous communities based on incomplete and sometimes erroneous data. When we rely on data-driven policy and the data is either incomplete or wrong, what good does data-driven policy mean and do for Indigenous nations? It exacerbates the crisis of murdered and missing Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit. It leads to 1 in 10 Native women being a victim of homicide. It leads to thousands going missing each year. It leads to thousands of Indigenous families feeling rejected by justice. We are experiencing an epidemic of homicide and missing Indigenous persons cases for decades, Indigenous scholars have offered prospective policies to address this crisis. These prescriptions include restructuring data collection methodology and infrastructure of state and federal law enforcement, restores Indigenous nations' authority to prosecute non-Indians removed by Oliphant or Squamish Indian tribe, fund federal law enforcement, fund tribal courts, increase training for state law enforcement on tribal laws and concerns, create data sharing mechanisms between state and tribes, and many others you've heard before. Data collection methodology. Often data collection for Native American or tribal affiliation is not an option to law enforcement databases. In Utah, more than 50% of perpetrators remain classified as race unknown, while some data categories may have an option for Native American tribal affiliation. However, this is not an option. Having data on tribal affiliation can help tribes better understand what is happening to their tribal members in urban areas, to understand the scope of the crisis. Data on tribal affiliation of victims is essential. At this time, this type of data is limited. Additionally, Utah mortality data shows that Native Americans are victims of homicide at 4 times the rate of white people. Yet this data can't tell us the demographic we need to know and not only understand the scope of the crisis, but to recommend appropriate policy to bring this crisis to an end. Violence Against Women Act, full faith and credit provisions. Tribal protection orders are often unwittingly dismissed because county, municipal, or state law enforcement have had no training on tribal protection orders. We know from anecdotal evidence that state and city law enforcement have not recognized protective orders from tribal members as valid or even legitimate. Increased funding for municipal, county, and state law enforcement training on tribal protective orders is important for those fleeing from harm. Health indicators. While criminal justice and law enforcement data is important to develop of appropriate policy to curtail this crisis, policy development with law enforcement data, however, will likely not touch the system and underlying factors of the crisis. Understanding domestic violence, sexual assault, stalking, and trafficking as pathways of crisis requires engaging data and risky behavior that ends to frame individuals as targets of violence. Bringing an end to the crisis requires serious attention to underlying factors to alleviate risky behavior for some victims. These factors include addressing, among many other things, the epidemic of PTSD experienced many tribal members. So in conclusion, because of MMIWG, crisis spans multiple policy domains, jurisdictions, and regions, the response must be multi-pronged. For far too long, our communities and nations have grieved and mourned for our brothers, sisters, mothers, fathers, grandfathers, grandmothers, aunties, uncles, nieces, and nephews. It's time for a clear federal commitment to fund tribal law enforcement shelters, domestic violence, and sexual assault organizations, and to act policy change that will bring justice to victims, families of victims, survivors, and families of survivors. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments today. Go ahead, Erica, with the next presenter with another gentle reminder, about 3 minutes.
Next, we have Delegate Amber Hanase, I think. Cannot see the rest of the name. Amber, you should be on. Amber?
Okay, let's go ahead and move on.
That is all I have at the moment.
Okay, Well, people are getting their thoughts together and wanting to getting ready to present. I think that a recap of some of the work that we've been doing with our pillars from the executive order would be very helpful. So, Mr. Addington, is there something that you can tell us about the cold case units and where you stand with your working group at this time?
You bet. Well, thank you. Yeah, just to give an update on the cold case task forces and what we're trying to do to get these very important investigative teams established and put into place. We've got 7 locations throughout the United States that will be located in regional task force offices that we're getting established. And we have got 2 agents that we have already coming on board. The second one come on today, as well as another one that will be on in, I think, July 7th. And then we've advertised the positions for all the rest of the locations, and they are going through the HR process right now to be brought on board. So we are just so excited that the Office of Justice Services is going to be able to team up with our other partners at the Department of Justice, our tribal partners, FBI, all of our state and locals in these areas to try to put together a multidisciplinary team to actually start working and on cold cases in Indian country. So we look forward to this thing moving forward in the very near future, and we're excited.
That's great. That's great work. And we know the Department of Justice is so happy to have the opportunity, as always, to collaborate with you and your team for sure. And we know that that has been a consistent theme that we've heard in these listening sessions about the collaboration between tribal law enforcement, BIA, and the FBI. So that's definitely a very important topic for us to be looking at and figuring out ways to combat any issues with that collaboration. So thank you, Charlie, for that. Do we have Erica, anyone who's ready to comment?
I have Grace Boltail.
Wonderful.
Grace, if you're having any issues,
hello,
oh, there you are. Okay. Go ahead.
Thank you. I want to comment about my niece and our family's fight for justice for her. My niece, Katy Sullivan, Pretty Places, had just turned 18 years old when she went missing in Bighorn County, Montana in late August last year. Bighorn County has the most reported cases of missing and murdered Indigenous women in the state and among the highest rates of missing and murdered Indigenous women in the U.S. When we reported Katy Sullivan missing, there was no missing persons report filed. When her body was discovered and hardened 5 days later, she remained identified for 2 weeks. Her mother went to the funeral home, also run by the county coroner, and she was told that the body of her daughter was not there. We continued to report Katy Sullivan missing to Bighorn County law enforcement, who still did not ever file a missing report for her. There was no report of the discovery of this Jane Doe in the media or by law enforcement. After learning that the crime lab took 2 weeks to identify Katy Sullivan, the county coroner had taken her remains before she was identified, and that the turmoil in the Bighorn County Sheriff's Office led to delays in the investigation, and that no one in our family was interviewed about her death even after she was identified. I have no other conclusion to come to other than that law enforcement did not care about Katy Sullivan, give her the dignity of treating her as a human being, let alone a girl that was a victim of a crime. She did not choose to end up deceased in a stranger's yard, only to be discovered several days after she died. Based on my family's interaction with Bighorn County and the Montana Department of Justice, they do not care, can't be bothered. Katy Sullivan's death is not their problem. If the weak link in the system is law enforcement, that needs to be addressed in your task force and with the people who oversee justice in Montana. Our family has had to navigate this unjust system on our own with no advocacy from any task force. We've pushed back, marched, protested, and demanded that county and state do more or even do something. We've repeatedly asked our Montana elected officials for help and for the U.S. Attorney General, our U.S. senators to call for, and our calls for assistance have gone unheard. Meanwhile, our families are left with no police reports and no answers. Our family had to wait 15 weeks to have an autopsy report from the county attorney who refuses to speak to us now. Even after the U.S. Attorney's MMIW task force has formed, nothing has changed for our family's request for answers and justice. I reached out to the MMIP coordinator in Montana, and he told me he had to defer to Bighorn County officials. We've asked the Montana Department of Justice, and they said they will not help unless Bighorn County asked them to. Well, the county attorney did ask them to, and they told them no. And I've asked for advice from the MMIP specialist in Montana, and I still have not received a response. I'm still asking, what can anyone do to help us? Thank you.
Thank you so much for your heartfelt comments. Thank you. Do we have another presenter? Does anyone on the task force have any comments?
We have Delegate Amber. Are you able to speak?
Hi, good morning. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, thank you. So kia ani nisle do belagana bashushin deschini de chedo belagana de shinale Shay Amber Tanas Bakrati Yanishia. I'm a Navajo Nation Council delegate. I'm the chairwoman of the Nabakia Sexual Assault Prevention Subcommittee, and I want to thank the task force for the opportunity to provide some comments regarding the missing and murdered Diné relatives on Navajo Nation. The Missing and Murdered Diné Relatives Task Force was created to support our Diné families who have had the challenge of dealing with law enforcement, find their missing loved one. On Navajo Nation, we, as a tribal leader, I cannot tell you how many Navajos are missing here on the Navajo Nation. That demonstrates just a lack of data sharing, that reflects the lack of communication and coordination, and that also reflects the lack of support that our families need. So we do have grassroots, all volunteer, who are going through NANIS, who are self-trained, and going through the databases trying to identify and get all of those Navajo missing relatives information so that we can actively look for them. So I appreciate Mr. Addington's update on the cold case. I would actually need more information. As a tribal leader, I have not received a process in terms of how I can refer cases to the cold case unit, which I believe is very important. We have a current case that spans many different jurisdictions, and their family needs the help and the support of our federal partners to solve her disappearance and to recover her. And I know that I'm running late on time, but if I may, I'd like to finish by saying that we've held a series of conferences on the ground with our community members. We've talked about our missing children in Shiprock, in Flagstaff. We've discussed our police response In the city of Gallup, we talked about missing veterans and unsheltered relatives. In Tuba City, we looked at the unique challenges of our Navajo male relatives who here on the nation are active, or actually we have
Hello? I have Vivian Billy.
What? What I gotta do?
Vivian, your line is open. You can speak now.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
I'm here on behalf of MMIP of Northern Oklahoma, trying to get a grip on what's going on here and funding, and also trying to find out about the funding aspect of it.
Hi, this is Katy Sullivan, and I don't. But when you talk about the funding aspect, you mean what? One of the things we're trying to do is to look where there are gaps in funding. Right now, we're assessing and listening and looking for gaps, but there isn't at this juncture. It's more like we're trying to utilize what we already have and do it better. So where aren't we? I can say that in the last 3 years, there has been set aside money from the Crime Victims Fund on the victim services side of things. And so we have been trying very hard to build victim services, which I think does cross-section with this issue for sure, in Indian country. So those were, unprecedented amounts that were a direct set aside for Indian country. We will be putting that money out this year as a formula. They were competitive grants for the first 2 years, but after getting feedback from all of you and our partners, we decided that a formula was a better fit and would better expend that money. This task force does not have funding attached, but we will be looking at places where we need to be requesting funding, and I think that's the legislative piece that was on the PowerPoint. Tara, do you want
What
to
is the $273 million about for the MMIW?
Tara?
Will it be dispersed to local MMIW
Yeah.
chapters?
Hello?
Hello?
Hi, we can
Yes.
hear you.
Is what is the $273 million for the MMIW for?
I'm going to defer. Tara, do you know what they're commenting on? Is that DOI or DOJ?
I'm sorry, I can't answer that question because I'm not sure to what appropriation you are referring to. If I have a little more context, I don't know what 273 million for MMIW. It's certainly not at DOI, the Department of the Interior.
Vivian Billy?
Yeah.
Before. Before we move on to the next speaker, operator, I wanted to provide some additional information. I know that the previous speakers had raised some issues about partnerships, about data, and about improved communication with families. When you look at and this is Assistant Secretary Sweeney, when you look at the executive order, it calls for best practices and clarity of roles. And what I want to highlight is that under the best practices, looking at how we can improve the way law enforcement investigators and prosecutors respond to the high volume of cases and to any investigative challenges in the cases that involve female victims. We are also charged with making recommendations on best practices for collecting and sharing data amongst various jurisdictions and law enforcement agencies. And as we've heard from the previous speakers, you know, there are challenges there, and sharing information and ensuring that the information that we're sharing is accurate. Looking at developing the better use of existing criminal databases, NCIC, CODIS, NDIS, NAMUS are some of the existing data systems that are utilized, and working with tribal law enforcement to also better utilize these databases where appropriate. The executive order also calls for clarity of roles, and the lead for developing the best practices guidance for law enforcement, including the communication with affected families, is so important. And that's something that we continue to hear throughout these listening sessions, is the feedback to families and how important it is. HHS is going to be taking the lead on a communications kit that Commissioner Hovland can provide additional information on a little later. Looking at formalizing agreements or arrangements among law enforcement to promote the maximally cooperative, trauma-informed responses to cases. And that's extremely important, as we know, as so many of our community members have experienced trauma in their lives, and those that have been traumatized respond differently. And it's important for the first responders to recognize those signs. And just to wrap up, to develop and execute an education and outreach campaign for communities that are most affected by crimes against Natives. I raise these points because of the comments that we've heard so far about data, about partnerships, about the need for communication and assistance. And to the caller who was talking about her missing family member in Bighorn County, I do want to just let you know that the U.S. Attorney for Montana, Kurt Alme, is listening on the line as well. So with that, I turn it back to you. Thank you, Co-Chair Sullivan.
Great, thank you. Do we have anyone who would like to speak? Erica?
The members that have their hands raised, I do not have phone numbers attached to them, so it means they are not dialed in, so we cannot enable speaking mode on them.
Okay, great. Do you have a dial-in number that you can announce to the group so they can dial in, or the dial-in, can you give us some logistics on that or not? Because we definitely want to hear from these people.
They can, if they can type their number into the comment box, I feel maybe that would be the best way, and then I can dial to them if they would pick up when we call. So if they have anything they'd like to say, if they could place their number into the comment box, and we will dial them in.
Okay, great, thank you. In the meantime,
oh, I'm sorry. I have Jolene Holgate.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Jolene, you should be unmuted. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you're on.
Okay, great. Ja, Jolene Holgate Yinshia. Zeflanin Schwent the Lok Dine Abashichin Hashkan had Zohadashichedo Torich Eatni Dashanella Shantu Hadan Yasinasha. My name is Jolene Holgate and I am from a small community in northern Arizona called Shanto. I am the project manager for the Missing and Murdered Genetic Relatives Initiative as a co-founder with the previous speaker, Council Delegate Amber Kines Bakrati. As she had mentioned, we have held a series of community forums across the Navajo Nation to really understand the missing and murdered issue that's taking place. One area that I definitely would recommend for the task force is to also take a look at the different areas that directly relate and impact the missing and murdered crisis. And this includes human trafficking, domestic violence, sexual violence, gender violence, child abuse, issues within the foster care system, and unsheltered relatives. All those issues, I think, play within the overall systemic problems that our Navajo as well as Indigenous relatives are facing out there. And then another important point that I wanted to include are the issues that have risen out of the COVID-19 pandemic. I think many of us are very familiar that because of these shelter-in-place orders, there's been a substantial increase in domestic and intimate partner violence, as well as sexual violence in general. So I think it's important for us to acknowledge that increase and how that's going to factor in within the task force's work. Some issues that took place on the Navajo specifically related to our missing relatives. There were curfews put in place that hindered a lot of the search and rescue efforts. As you know, every minute counts when searching for a missing person, and I think our federal, state, and tribal partners need to take a look at what those processes look like, how they can support those volunteer searches, what kind of curfew waivers can be provided to those individuals who are searching for their loved ones. Another issue that we ran into, and I think a lot of tribes have also endured, is the jurisdiction and database issues. For instance, a recent relative that was missing was put into one database but was not in another, and there was another relative where they were not in any of the databases. So those were just two important issues that I did want to bring up. Thank you again for allowing me time to speak, and again, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much for your thoughtful comments. Erica, do we have someone ready to go?
Yes, I have Lorenda Morgan. Lorenda, you're enabled. Go ahead. Lorenda, do we have you? I think she might have disconnected. Oh, she's back on. Lorenda? Okay. Maybe we'll give her just a moment. I have Anita next.
Hello?
Anita?
No, this is Brenda.
Oh, Brenda, great. Go ahead. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Brenda Gold, and I'm an attorney in Okmulgee, Oklahoma. I'm Muskogee Creek. And I would just like to share a couple of things that happened in this last year during our legislative session. As some of you are from Oklahoma, you may remember that we had to shut down our legislative session in the middle of the pandemic, and we had some bills introduced. Specifically, during the listening session that our state government had, some issues that came forward kind of mirror the same things that happened in Montana. The law enforcement agencies and police officers did not take missing persons of Indigenous people seriously, and for that reason, the media wasn't alerted. There was no kind of bulletins put out. They didn't search for them, and so that is another repeat thing that happens across Indian country, is that, you know, we're told, oh, they're just out partying, or, you know, they're they'll show back up and we're not taken seriously. And the other thing that was said over and over again during this legislative session was, why do we want to treat these Native people differently or carve out a special class for them when we ask for legislation to be passed to protect our women and our people? And I would like some assistance from possibly the task force or members of the task force in helping to address this kind of thinking, that we're asking for preferential treatment when we're asking for some type of alert system when an Indigenous person goes missing because of the crossroads here in Oklahoma of I-40 and I-35 going coast to coast. Human trafficking is a huge issue, and if we could have some sort of alert system when someone is in danger, like now our MMIW groups share when one of our sisters or one of our people goes missing. We put up flyers on social media, we say red alert, and we share it and say, if you see something, say something, call the police. And we're pretty much doing the job that the law enforcement agencies are doing. So we were asking for CLEAT training, which is the Council Law Enforcement training that all officers have to receive annually, for them just to receive 1 hour on the subject of MMIW and the cultural significance that happens to us when one of our Native sisters goes missing. And those both of those were met with resistance because our legislators didn't want to treat us special. And I would just like to point out that if we could get some assistance to overcome that kind of thinking, that would be great.
Great, thank you, Brenda, very much. This is Katy Sullivan, and I just wanted to add one thing about the alert system. This is not unique for Indian country, but there was a law and a bill that was passed last year, sponsored by Senator Warner from Virginia, for any adult that went missing, that there would be an alert system much like Amber Alert. It's called Ashanti's Law, and I know the Office of Justice Program is providing technical assistance to the states about how that actually operates. Victims advocacy groups were very instrumental in helping to create the law, because there's some people who don't want to be found and don't want an alert out. They're leaving for their safety, as I know Laura Rogers will be able to talk about as well. But there are instances like human trafficking and things like that where you want to get the alert out as quickly as possible. So there are some precautions in there, but there is now an alert system for adults under this particular law. So I did want to address that. It's not unique to Indian country. It is a national mandate. Laura, did you have anything, or did any of the task force members, FBI, have anything to add?
Katy, I think you covered it nicely. I think, though, it's important to know that with our 904 task force coming back into force, we're going to be engaging in research with respect to American Indian and Alaska Native women to further investigate the effectiveness of state, federal, and tribal and local responses to violence against women, specifically American Indian and Alaska Native women, make recommendations with respect to the responses and missing and murdered Indigenous women, and trying to get down to their bones of what the issues are. We have a task force put together of all Native Americans with respect to advising us on this research we're going to be getting going on that task force very shortly. I'm very excited about that. We've been working hard on that. And so hopefully we'll have some new research with respect to that. So we should see some good results from that.
Great, thank you. How about...
Yep,
go ahead.
This is Commissioner Hovland.
Go ahead. I just wanted Charlie Addington with OJS to talk about a feature that they have.
Yeah, well, good afternoon, everybody. Just one of the things that we've done just for receiving information or receiving tips on these type of crimes or any other kind of crimes is we actually developed an app for smartphones. It's called BIA Tips, and that you can do it with an Android phone or with an iPhone, either one. You can download that. You can actually have folks report information directly to us over that app, and when it gets reported, the individual reporting can either remain anonymous or they can actually communicate directly with one of the agents that gets assigned to through that app. So it's a really good tool just to help with the reporting of crimes in Indian country. And you can just download it through the App Store on any smartphone.
Thank you. This is Commissioner Hovland with the Administration for Native Americans, and I just also want to build upon the human trafficking aspect. We have the Office on Trafficking in Persons at Administration for Children and Families, and we partnered with them to produce some tools that are helpful for combating human trafficking, and they're free, they're online. One is the Combating Human Trafficking Native Youth Toolkit, and we partnered with Assistant Secretary Sweeney and Director Addington and BIE Director Tony Dearman, and have brought in training to our teachers, also with Johnson O'Malley, to help them identify what is human trafficking, what do you do if you observe it, and how do you respond to it. So educating those that have a reach into our Native communities, into the youth, so it's appropriate for our youth, it's free. We have been talking with Director Addington on doing a training with HHS, Office on Trafficking in Persons and Law Enforcement. So COVID-19 kind of came into play, and it's kind of hindered our training efforts, but we are going to plan to do so. And then also ANA and the Office on Trafficking in Persons produced for providers who see Native populations that may be victims of human trafficking. It's called SOAR for Native, and that stands for Stop, Observe, Ask, and Respond. It's free online training for professionals, for healthcare providers, counselors, social workers, for anybody, and we really want to ask you to utilize that in your communities. We are finding that education on what human trafficking is and how to respond to it is really very much needed yet. So we are trying to get that information out as much as possible. We need your help doing so. We're happy to provide you with those resources. And also there was a comment earlier about looking at our vulnerable populations, both in the urban settings and in our Native communities, those in the foster care system, runaway homeless youth, substance abuse issues, our elders. So at HHS, we are developing a framework to provide our services to specifically target our vulnerable populations and strengthen them through education and awareness and programs. So we hope to have this framework available in the coming months, but definitely we want to take this upstream and look at preventing and strengthening our populations, our Native populations. So thank you for bringing that up, and continue to follow us at the Operation Lady Justice as we produce these helpful tools.
Great. I think we have some more presenters. Erica?
Yes, I have, I'm going to try Lorenda again. Lorenda, your line is enabled. Please go ahead. Okay, she might have stepped away. So I'm going to move to Anita. Anita, your line is on. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I'll try to stay brief because I know that we're conscious of time, but it's hard because I have so many questions. My name is Anita. I'm calling from Sovereign Bodies Institute. We're the home of the largest database on missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit people. We've worked with many of the folks who called in and shared today. And I just, want to offer my respect and my appreciation for the words they shared with the task force. I'm also speaking as a survivor of trafficking myself, and as an Indigenous woman who was missing and reports were never taken, and who almost was murdered. I think Grace has done a really good job of highlighting some of the issues with law enforcement on the ground, and I want to say that we've got a project with over 30 families in that area, and we've documented over 100 cases in that area. All of them have the same problems that Grace has identified in terms of poor law enforcement response, inaccurate communication, lack of meaningful action on cases. This is not just, one case that's fallen through the cracks. It's systemic. I put some questions in the chat with regards to that area specifically. I'm wondering why Ernie Wyand was hired as the MMIP coordinator for Montana when there was a lawsuit filed against him for racial discrimination in how he handled homicide cases of Native people in Montana as an FBI agent. More largely, the families that we work with released an open letter in February asking for help from him and from other state and federal agencies. And we got no response to that letter whatsoever from any state or federal agency. So I'm wondering why that happened and how we can trust law enforcement to work with us in a good way, or even how we can trust them to develop best practices if they can't be bothered to pick up the phone. And to just, close with some of my own experiences as a survivor, police knew I was being trafficked. I was solicited by Spokane City police officers. They knew exactly what was happening to me. My trafficker was on Department of Corrections supervision, and someone from DOC was in our house twice a week. She would come in and saw a person-sized hole in the wall and me covered in bruises and believed his story that it was a tickle fight. And then locked him up in jail for 2 weeks because there was a beer bottle in our backyard that faces an alley that tons of people walk through. So there was a simultaneous complete erasure of the violence that I went through and intense racism. And so it's hard for me to fathom how we can trust law enforcement to create best practices without talking to us, or how we can trust them to create systems that better protect victims of trafficking or families who have gone through this crisis, knowing that nationally these issues exist. And, myself firsthand, I know what it's like to almost die because law enforcement don't take the violence you're experiencing seriously.
Thank you for your heartfelt testimony. We have more people who'd like to speak, and I just want to make sure that we do have an opportunity to hear from everyone before our end time at 3:30.
Okay, next we have on the line Carmen. Carmen, your line is on. Go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Halito Chimichikmalgami Mahonet. My name is Carmen Thompson Kleinko, and I am Choctaw and Wallapai. And there are 10 groups in Oklahoma, MMIW chapters, and those that support MMIW. And they are the MMIW Southwest Oklahoma, Geneva Hadley, Sharice Redbone, MMIW Indian Capital, Maria Adair, MMIW Southeast Oklahoma chapter, Olivia Gray, Noise, Vivian Billy, Northern MMIW chapter, MMIW Riverside, Deborah Maytubby, MMIW USA, Cynthia Perkins, MMIW Chickasaw chapter, Natalie Wallace, MMIW Comanche, Cindy Famero, Warrior Women's Society, Pam Smith with Noise, and Kawa MMIW chapter with Satoke and Darcy Schoon, a private investigator. We all work together whenever there's a missing or murdered person, and we got together with MMIW families, and the MMIW chapters were all grassroots, and we came together and asked what the needs were for the families. And I've been talking with Lisa Billy. I don't know if you guys know her, but she's the one that I gave the proposal to, but a lot of them are they're wanting a database developed. And working with MMIW, a lot of times when we go on searches and we talk with the police officers, they don't know about MMIW. And a lot of times the law enforcement, like someone said, that they don't take it seriously. But a lot of the things that the families was wanting was, let me go over them really quick, was funding to do our own search and rescue, follow up from OSBI, have their murdered families investigated. A lot of them don't get investigated by the law enforcement. And support families. There's a lot of needs for their families. When someone's family member is murdered in Oklahoma and they live in Arizona, they have to come here to Oklahoma, and that's a need that they need to be able to stay somewhere and collect their loved ones. And to be out there in the woods, MMIW, they go out there and they search. We're not trained, but we go and search for our families because there's no one doing it. And we need the red alert on the news. We need advocates, search assistants, mandatory reporting to NAMAs.
Okay, do we want to move to the next, or did you need to address?
No, go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, next on the line we have Chase Velasquez. You're on the line. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Good early afternoon, everyone, for those in the East Coast. My name is Chase Velasquez. I am a member of the White Mountain Apache Tribe here in Arizona. I am the Assistant Attorney General for the St. Carlos Apache Tribe in Arizona. I'm also the Special Assistant U.S. Attorney for the tribe, and I work closely with the U.S. Attorney's Office in Arizona. I think the purpose of today's discussion was for the task force to receive comments from those of us that are in the trenches as to what can be done to address this issue. And I think one of the opportunities that leaders of tribes really need to take is their attorneys or prosecutors becoming special assistant U.S. attorneys within the district of where the reservation is located. That is available through the Tribal Law and Order Act, and I say that because these attorneys will be in the office on the reservation anytime an incident happens, such as a major crime. The SALSA is there to work collectively with the local law enforcement, whether that be the tribal police, the assigned federal investigatory body, and to kind of shepherd this whole process along and keep tabs on a lot of these cases. And I've been the SALSA for St. Carlos for 2 years now. We have a good working relationship with the U.S. Attorney's Office, the FBI, the BIA, and a lot of this takes working together. And to be frank, a lot of the tasks is going to fall with tribes at the beginning when an incident arises to really keep hands on what's going on and to aggressively advocate and communicate all of this to the U.S. Attorney's Office and the federal investigatory bodies. And I'm happy to say that our relationship has been good so far. We've had a lot of positive results. Is there still a lot of issues that we worked on? Yes, there is, but I think we'll get there. And I think that's the main thing, the main tool available out there for tribes. And I think that's one thing that the task force should be mindful of as far as putting more resources into the tribal SALSA program, because it does work. So I do think that's one tool that tribes can take to address this issue of missing and the murder rates of Indigenous women. So that's what I wanted to comment on.
Great. Thank you so much for those comments. I appreciate it. I do want to just remind everyone that written comments can be submitted on Operation Lady Justice, all one word, Operation Lady Justice at usdoj.gov. So you can supply written comments and or testimony to that email. Next presenter, please.
Okay, next on the line we have Leonard. Okay, go ahead. You're on the line.
Hello. Can you all hear me?
Yes, Leonard, we can.
All right. Greetings, everyone. I'm Leonard Aguilar from the Okewinge Pueblo in New Mexico. And I apologize, I just now logged on. I was in a board meeting since this morning, and I had every intention to be on this call. I missed the majority of it. However, I wanted to probably ask a question to the Attorney General's office as well as Assistant Secretary for Indian Affairs. I have been corresponding with you both for quite some time, since January, and I have not received any type of correspondences. I've reached out to our Southwest regional offices, and I've been speaking with the interim chief there for OJS. I was responsible for passing legislation in the state of New Mexico regarding missing and unidentified persons, not specific to Native American population, but to missing and unidentified individuals despite their nationality or ethnicity. And my brother has been missing 3 years, 8 months, and 24 days as of today. He is a Native American male, and I do know that I've had some pretty bad experiences with the State Office of Indian Affairs and various other agencies because my brother is not a Native American woman. So, you know, I have to advocate for all the Native American males out there that are missing or remain missing. But this law that was passed in the state of New Mexico does not segregate nor discriminate towards one gender. And so with that being stated, I have a very good rapport with the NAMUS organization. I have brought forth to the table and opened the eyes of how many existing people that are also Native American, non-Native, and non-Native people that are in the system in New Mexico that date way back to many years past. So I would like to know, first off, is how is this listening session and discussions going to play out when we don't get any type of feedback and or responses from our Indian Affairs Assistant Secretary and or her operatives, let alone our regional offices. We act solely on our own resources as individuals and searching for our loved ones. And
Erica?
Yes.
First, I just want to, this is Katy Leonard, and I do want to let you know that I did receive your voicemail message the other day. I've passed it on to Marcia Good, our executive director. I believe that you spoke at the NCAI task force conference that we had as well, and the legislation that you have put together in New Mexico is very exciting to us. I don't want to blame COVID, but I do think that we got behind on some of the individual outreach, but you can expect to hear from Marcia. She's working with my scheduler so that we can talk. So I did want to address that specifically. I also just want to note that we are at about 5 minutes to the end of our session. Were there any other hands raised, Erica?
Yes, we are trying to get Sean Partridge on the line. He is dialing in right now. Okay,
Katie,
and Tara?
while he's dialing in, can I just provide some comments to Mr. Aguilar? I'm sincerely apologetic. I have not seen anything from you come across my desk or received any phone calls, but that's not to say that I don't want to have a conversation with you. And so if you could provide your contact information to Marcia Good at the Operation Lady Justice at usdoj.gov email, then my office will be in touch with you. You raise a good point about the inclusion of men in the efforts of this task force, and the efforts of this task force are to focus on missing and murdered American Indians and Alaska Natives, men, women, and children. And so it's important that we not leave our men behind as we move forward to try to arrest these alarming trends in our communities. And so I appreciate your advocacy and look forward to having a conversation. Thank you.
Hi, I'm still on hold.
I think we can hear you.
Oh, okay. I was just waiting for you guys to call my name. My name is Misky. I've been on hold for about like 40 minutes.
Okay, well, do you want to provide some comments?
Yeah, real quickly, yat eshikedo shidanesha a Misky yanabat yatati yanisha. Nanas Ejanishland, ThunderClan Prairie Band, Potawatomi, Washishteen, Auto, Hatwa Deshichedo, Chichimeka Nakai Deshanele. Hello everyone, my name is Misky Yatati. I am the founder of Navajo Nation Missing Persons, also a member of the Missing and Murdered Near Relatives. And I'm originally from Oklahoma, but I do live here in New Mexico. I know that Jolene had been on the call earlier and she did mention about COVID delays in searching. She was actually talking about, I believe she was talking about me. I do have a missing relative. He is my closest uncle. We have been searching for him for 29 days. The one thing I did want to mention is that I believe that when a person goes missing, they do need to be entered into NCIC immediately. We should actually make that mandatory because when the Navajo Police Department took my uncle's case and made the report, they never entered him into NCIC. So when I found that out, I had to request for the county, McKinley County Sheriff, to take my uncle's case so that they could put him into that database. And because of the COVID delays, we were not able to search for my uncle in the Gallup, New Mexico area. We were actually put on restriction where we couldn't get in there. And that caused a lot of dilemma for us, and now our hope of finding my uncle alive was just totally demolished right there and then when they told us we couldn't search there. The other thing I really quickly want to bring up is that we need to also focus on our unidentified Native Americans. We need to bring that to light, bring that to the media. A lot of people don't talk about that, and I know there's a lot of feedback on that, but we do need to bring our unidentified relatives to light so that there can be connections to our missing. And the other thing I also wanted to ask was, what do you guys consider a cold case? And one thing I also want to add is that the volunteer searches, we really do need that. All our tribes need that. We do need funding to have our own volunteering searching groups and cadaver dogs. for us, this is day 29 for my uncle missing, and there's only 5 of us out of my family that are still searching for my uncle on foot. So these are some of the things I just kind of wanted to bring up quickly. Thank you guys for having me and letting me be able to talk.
Thank you so much. We are nearing we're actually at the end of our time. I would like to see if Tyler Fish has joined us, and if so, would you like to make a few comments, Tyler?
Hi, yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Katy. Harris Cheotio, tribal leaders and Indian Country Public Safety Advocates. My name is Tyler Fish. I'm a Muskogee Creek and Cherokee. I may have had the opportunity to meet some of you previously as the Principal Tribal Liaison at the White House Office of Intergovernmental Affairs. I am now the Acting Executive Director for the White House Council on Native American Affairs. Over the course of the past 3 months, as you can imagine, my focus has been principally on COVID-19 response in Indian Country, and through the challenges that have presented from the pandemic, your Operation Lady Justice team here has remained steadfast in their commitment to address the issue of missing and murdered American Indians and Alaska Natives, and I know that many of you have continued your efforts to protect your citizens from the epidemic of violence that impacts tribal citizens even through these challenges. And that's significant because we know that this issue doesn't stop regardless of the periodic or incremental crises or situations that affect our tribal nations. And I think in many ways it's reasonable for us to assume that violence against American Indians and Alaska Natives may be exacerbated by the conditions that we find ourselves with the present coronavirus pandemic. So, I make that judgment based upon the issues and concerns that many of you and others in Indian Country have brought to me over the course of the past few months, that the fight to eliminate missing and murdered cases in Indian Country has not gone away, and you have not let up your efforts regardless of the COVID-19 pandemic. So I'm very encouraged, I'm grateful, and appreciate our leadership from Deputy Assistant Attorney General Sullivan as well as Assistant Secretary Sweeney to really get our external engagement up and running again, and but also for all the hard work that they both have been doing behind the scenes, even in the midst of the broader COVID-19 shutdown over the last few months. So I just want to close briefly with the point to say that I thank each and every one of you for your commitment, and I appreciate your comments and suggestions on this listening session because they help us to really tailor our approach to these critical issues in a way that is more relevant, responsive to the issues and the contributing factors that you're experiencing in your communities. And this is a team effort. It's going to take collaboration and coordination among all of us to have real-world lasting impact. So in remembrance of our loved ones who have fallen victim to violence in Indian Country, I sincerely appreciate your partnership, and I look forward to a time whenever we can all have these conversations face-to-face once again. So thank you very much, Katy. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Tyler. And that concludes the listening session for today. This is Tara Sweeney. I want to encourage folks, if you have detailed recommendations, and we've heard a number of good ones today, I would encourage you to submit those comments to operationladyjustice@usdoj.gov. The comments received will be reviewed by the task force. It's also extremely important to understand that the information that is shared here helps guide our discussions as a task force. And we bring that back to our respective hallways within HHS, within DOJ, within DOI. I sincerely appreciate the time that we have had today, and I look forward to participating in additional listening sessions. We have two more scheduled and a consultation scheduled for July 7 in Billings, Montana. So I wish you all well and be safe. Thank you.